Is Johnny Morton the new offensive coordinator for the Lions, or could it be somebody else?
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, everybody? Matt Derry with you. It is Locked On Lions on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today is Saturday, April 5th, and a Sunday, April 6th, a special Saturday edition of Locked On Lions. We were unable to do a show yesterday. Too much going on with opening day yesterday, and business I had to take care of, and events to be at, and everything else. So we're back with you on a Saturday edition. Thanks for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Lions today is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. Follow us on all social media platforms. You know where to find us. Watch us on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. And oh, by the way, shout out to our everydayers that are out there that watch or listen to the podcast daily. I ran into two everydayers yesterday downtown, walking around on opening day. It was great to see some of these guys. Alex Hutchins stopped me and said hello. Alex, thank you for your support of the show. And also Bill Groves, super nice guy, stopped me on the street like, hey, we love the show and love Locked On Lions. So thank you to our everydayers. We do have a call of the day today later on from one of our everydayers. If you want to be our call of the day and chime in on the show, you can do that at speakpipe.com/Dairy Podcast page. That's speakpipe.com/Dairy Podcast page. We'll play one of those coming up later on in the show. All right. I want to talk about Jared Goff and his influence on the offense, something that was brought up at the owners' meetings this week, which I found definitely intriguing. We'll get into that. Ben Johnson, head coach of the Bears, was asked by one Michael Stone about his comments, kind of taking a little dig at Jared Goff. When did Ben Johnson do that? At the Combine. Was it a dig or not? Hear what Ben Johnson had to say as he sort of clears the air about that situation. We will do that coming up momentarily. Also, a lot of chatter about defensive tackles in this draft and where the Lions sit in terms of all the D tackles that they have. We'll get into that coming up on the program as well, right here today on Locked On Lions, which we love bringing to you each and every day. If you are new to the show, welcome in. Thank you for being here. Tell your friends about us. Tell them to subscribe on YouTube. Tell them to subscribe on Apple and wherever they get their podcast. And we would appreciate their support immensely. We're getting close to the draft, folks. We are right there, getting there. What are we, 2.5 weeks away? This is fantastic. Cannot wait, as the Lions will pick, of course, 28th in the first round. All right, so this week, Dan Campbell was talking about a bevy of topics when it came to the Lions. And one thing that he did bring up at the owners' meetings in Florida this week was Jared Goff and how now he will be working with a new offensive coordinator really for just the second time, the third time, I guess, with the Lions, though. Of course, he was working with Anthony Lynn. Ben Johnson was there. Dan Campbell was there. Of course, Anthony Lynn, the first year, which was a disastrous 2021 season, was kind of demoted mid-season. And Dan Campbell called the plays. And Ben Johnson was having a hand in things as sort of the tight ends coach at the time. Ben Johnson, of course, has been the OC the last 3 years. And now John Morton, whom worked with the Lions in 2021 as a special assistant coach on the offensive side, will be the new offensive coordinator for the Lions this year. Remember, we've talked about this. I wasn't doing backflips over this hire because in 2017, Morton was the OC with the Jets, and it did not go well. So much so that after one season, he was fired by then head coach Todd Bowles. Morton's getting another chance now. He's got experience with the Lions. He's called plays in college at USC. He's called plays at the NFL level. He's the new OC. But how's it going to work between him and Jared Goff? And I was reading a lot of stuff, and Tim Twentyman had a really good piece at DetroitLions.com about this as well. Here's 5 seasons now for Goff. He's entering his 5th season with the Leos and 10 in the NFL. But one thing that Dan Campbell made a point of saying this week is that the next step for Goff who's about to be 30 years old, is taking more of an ownership of the offense. Here's what Campbell had to say, quote, Jared continues to grow every year. I'd say the next step for him, and he knows this, like last year, he came to us and everything we wanted him to do in the offense, he did. And then he began to bring stuff to us like, hey, man, I can see this look. Let me get to this play. I know I have these options in the bag, but let me get to this as well. End quote. Morton was John Morton, of course, who Goff's going to be working with now as the team's passing game coordinator back in 2022. Actually, it wasn't 2021. It was 2022, which was really the first year that the Lions offense kind of took off. But what's interesting about that comment is John Morton going to be the boss of this offense like Ben Johnson was the last few years? Or is this kind of going to be a situation where Jared's been here now 5 years. John Morton's coming back to town, coming back to work on this offense and work with Goff. Is this almost going to be like a 50-50 split or a situation where, yes, John Morton is the offensive coordinator. He's going to call the plays, but is Jared Goff going to sort of be the pseudo and co-offensive coordinator here? Is he going to overrule Morton occasionally? Because we know this was Ben Johnson's offense with Dan Campbell making the final calls on things. But for Campbell to come out and go, look, Jared Goff's going to have more ownership of this offense, including game plan and audibling. And quote, I would anticipate that to take another step up, meaning audibling more, evolving the offense. This Lions offense has 6 Pro Bowlers on it. Led the NFL in points per game last year, 33 points per game. Led the league in touchdowns last year with 70. And of course, the point differential, a lot of this due to the offense, was at you remember this number, folks, plus 222. Jared Goff has a ton of say, but here's the thing. Do fans want to hear that a player is going to have this kind of say and this kind of power when it comes to running the offense? Is John Morton do the Lions just go out and say, listen, we're going to search for new OC, Ben Johnson's in Chicago. And let's say they interviewed some candidates, but they told these candidates, and again, this is just me speculating. Let's just say they told these candidates, hey, by the way, you're the OC, but Jared Goff is going to have a ton of power here. And then maybe some of these other coaches go, I want final say. I don't want to be overruled by my quarterback. Does Goff have the cachet to do this? Remember, he's been a Pro Bowler now twice with the Lions in 2022 and this past year. He was a top 5 MVP finalist this year. He put up big numbers, but here's the but. Playoff game against Washington, he was god-awful. Everybody was bad. And there's a certain segment of the fan base that says, wait a minute, while Jared Goff has done really, really well, how much of this was killer offensive line, killer running backs, one of the best receivers in the game, one of the best tight ends in the game, and the system led by Benedict Johnson. So now we're handing the keys to everything to Goff. The next step is that he's got more say and more power and more ability to audibilize. I'm okay with it because I think Jared Goff's resume is better than John Morton's. I'm okay with it. I think Jared Goff is very smart. I think Jared Goff likes running the football. There are some quarterbacks out there that go, let me throw it 50 times a game. Matthew Stafford would throw it 50 times a game if he could. Now, does it help Stafford out when he's got Kyren Williams running the pill? Of course. But there are certain quarterbacks that would love it if they could just stand back there and play pitch and catch all day. I'm not so sure Jared Goff is that guy. I think Jared Goff enjoys seeing a ground and pound and then third down, play action, second down, play action, and they do good things in the passing game. Goff, I think, has earned now entering year 5 the right to take that next step. But I also believe the hiring of Morton was enabled. I think Goff had a say in the hire, and I think Goff knows I can be the boss of this offense. I couldn't before. Ben Johnson was so good. He was the OC. He was, damn near assistant coach of the year twice. This is going to be Jared Goff's offense. And what I'm interested in seeing is how it's going to go, because over the last couple of years, and I read you the stats, let me give you some stats. As I told you last year, the Lions put up historical numbers. So when we see regression, which we might see, are we to blame John Morton or are we to blame Jared Goff? Speaking of Ben Johnson, he's been slinging arrows at Matt LaFleur, at the Lions, at Jared Goff, but he kind of walked some comments back this past week at the owners' meetings. We'll tell you about that next here on Locked On Lions. Love welcoming in a new sponsor. It's our friends at Nissan, and the Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're going to take a look at draft prospects and pick one guy that stands out. The guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the Lions forward as we look ahead to next season is none other than Boston College edge rusher Donovan Eziraku. All right. So he's this week's Armada clear-cut player of the week, Eziraku. Let me tell you about why I think Donovan Eziraku is that guy this week. Heavy duty, rugged, just like the Armada, right? Conquers the road with capability and confidence. Dream big, go big. This is a kid that could fit the Lions system and had 16 and a half sacks this past season for Boston College. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what I think Eziraku can do here in Detroit if the Lions pick him at 28. It's clear that our player of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Hope everybody's having an excellent weekend. A happy opening day to everybody that was downtown yesterday. Tigers got a couple of back-to-back wins here. I know they're playing the AAA White Sox, but hey, still got to play the games. And Kerry Carpenter is on fire. And congratulations to the Detroit Pistons. I know the local Detroit media doesn't want to talk about it much. They'd rather slap it up and talk about the Red Wings trying to make the playoffs. There's going to be playoffs at the LCA, and it ain't going to be the team that built the arena. It's going to be the team that rents it out to the Red Wings, the Pistons, or is a renter. The Detroit Pistons, baby, are back, and they are playoff bound. Awesome. They're either going to be the 4 seed, 5 or 6, and congrats to JB Bickerstaff, Trajan Langdon, and that whole crew. They are building it the right way and playing great basketball right now. So props to the Pistons, who are going to the postseason. Ben Johnson spoke at the owners' meetings this week, and who else was down there? None other than legendary godfather of Detroit sports radio, Michael Stone. Stoney was down there. I have no idea why. He and I have been playing phone tag, so I'm going to call him later today and find out what he was doing in Florida. Probably down there on spring break. But he asked Ben Johnson, like, hey, were you taking a shot at Jared Goff at the Combine when you were just glowingly discussing Caleb Williams and said, you've never worked with a quarterback at this level that has that skill of running around and creating plays on your own? Johnson told Stoney, no, it was not a shot at Jared. Quote, I've talked to Jared about it. Sometimes your comments get skewed a little bit. That was not my intent. He certainly understands that. It was more directed towards Caleb and what he brings to the table, end quote. I love this. And here's why. Ben Johnson, whether he wants to say it or not, did take a little jab at Jared Goff. He did. When he was asked about Caleb Williams and Caleb Williams' ability to scramble and make plays with his legs, all he had to say was, oh my gosh, here's what he does. Here's what I'm excited about working with, and be done with it. For him to then say, I've never worked with anybody at the NFL level like that, was a dig at Goff. It's the same type of thing when he took a dig at Matt LaFleur at his press conference when he said, I love being back in this division, and I love beating Matt LaFleur twice a year. He's playing to his base. He's playing to the Bears fans. He did it with LaFleur. He's doing it with Goff. For him to say, I had to talk to Jared about it and clear the air, means it got back to Goff. It did. And I'm sure they had to have a discussion about it. Do I think Ben Johnson and Jared Goff's relationship is soured now? I don't think so. It doesn't sound like it. They had a great relationship. Dan Campbell continues to praise Ben Johnson and says all sorts of great things. All sorts of great things about Ben Johnson still to this day. Amon-Ra St. Brown on the St. Brown podcast took exception to it. Ben Johnson has said that since he has left Chicago, his family is still in Detroit because his kids are in school. And he said, my family still lives there right now. And everybody I've seen face to face has been super supportive and very respectable. And so I certainly appreciate that. And so does my family, which is fine. But I'm telling you, he took a little dig at Jared Goff there. And he was doing it purposely. He was on a media tour. He's been on a media tour. He's trying to bring the Bears back. He's also trying to win the fans over. But Ben Johnson can do all the chirping that he wants. But the bottom line is this. He has to win. Right? Matt Nagy tried it. I'm not saying chirping, but Matt Nagy tried it. Mark Trestman tried it. Eberflus tried it. All these coaches have tried to win there. They have not won since Lovie Smith and Rex Grossman. What was it, like 06, 07 when they played the Colts in the Super Bowl. So interesting that Ben Johnson had to talk to Jared Goff and clear the air about those comments and say, no, Jared, I wasn't taking a shot at you. You had to talk to your buddy about it. So obviously somebody was upset about it. And obviously it made the rounds to the point where they had to, quote unquote, clear the air about that situation. If I'm Ben Johnson, I'm very careful now how I'm talking. He's done this multiple times. Very quickly on the Lions defensive line situation, we discussed the other day, Lions have a lot of interior defensive linemen, a ton actually. And Brad Holmes made it a point the other day when he was discussing the Lions D-line. He said they are heavy on defensive tackles. Currently right now, Aleem McNeil, Levi Onwuzurike, DJ Reader, Roy Lopez, he's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Broderick Martin, Mekhi Wingo, Patrick O'Connor, Miles Adams is back, and so is Chris Smith, the pride of Cranbrook. So does that mean that the Lions will not pursue another interior defensive lineman? At the league meetings this week in Florida, General Manager Brad Holmes did note that the team was getting, and this is from Justin Rogers at Detroit Football Network, quote, getting kind of heavy along the defensive line following the initial wave of free agency. Again, they re-upped O'Connor, Adams, and Smith, Onwuzurike, and brought in Roy Lopez. But yet, I still believe there could be room for one more because Aleem McNeil is going to be out until at least October. Levi Onwuzurike has not shown, although this past year he did, in 1 year, that he can stay healthy consistently. DJ Reader underperformed this year. Roy Lopez is a nice piece, a backup that they signed. Broderick Martin, who knows? First 2 years, he's been missing in action. Mekhi Wingo, I'm excited about. That's a kid in last year's 6th-round pick from LSU that I really like. And if he can stay healthy, I like him a lot. O'Connor, Adams, and Smith are all bit players. If a Kenneth Grant from Michigan, a Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, if any of these guys somehow slipped to 28 or got to 22 or 23, I think Brad Holmes would jump at the chance to trade up and get a guy like Kenneth Grant. And I think Brad Holmes is playing with the media a little bit by saying, yeah, we're getting kind of heavy at D-tackle, because I don't think he wants other teams to know that he might be interested in some of these guys. Now, a Mason Graham or somebody like that, forget about. You're not going to get him. Day two guys, that maybe at number 60 the Lions could get as far as defensive tackles. A lot of people talking about TJ Sanders from South Carolina, who the last 2 years has had close to 9 sacks. That's a guy whose name has been mentioned, and the Lions have talked to. So we shall see. But it's very, very interesting that Brad Holmes is talking about being heavy on interior defensive linemen, yet that is where he's always buttered his bread. Brad has drafted tons of detail. He drafted McNeil. He drafted Onwuzurike. He brought Pat O'Connor back. He signed DJ Reader to a huge contract last offseason. You win in the trenches, and I'm not ruling out, even though there's a lot of names there that Holmes brought in, that the Lions are not going to do business along the defensive line. So mark that one down. That's something that, could happen. So we'll see about all of that. All right, coming up next, it is our call of the day. You can go to speakpipe.com/dairy podcast page to be our call of the day. We will do that coming up next. And a quick preview for those of you that watch or listen to Locked On Lions every day. On Tuesday's show, linebacker from Auburn and U of D Jesuit High School, one of my former students, Dorian Mausi, is going to join us on the show. Dorian is taking part in the Lions local pro day on Tuesday, where they bring in players from Michigan, Michigan State, Central, high school guys with Detroit ties. Dorian, of course, played his college ball at Duke and then at Auburn, but he's a Cub from U of D Jesuit, and Dorian's going to come on the show and talk about his experience down at the Allen Park facility on Tuesday. You're not going to want to miss that here on Locked On Lions. All right, folks, it is time for our call of the day. This is when some of you chime in and let me know what you're thinking when it comes to your Detroit Lions. Man, this fan base is just revved up and cannot wait for this coming season. Our call of the day today, a local product, Greg Farmer checks in. Let's take a listen.
Hey, Greg Farmer, Traverse City. Listen to you always a day behind because I'm on YouTube, but I listen every day. Just heard your piece on Hendon Hooker, and my comment is it sounds like the Lions brought in some people that Hendon Hooker can beat out, boost his confidence, and push him to another level. What do you think about those thoughts? Love your show. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right, so there is our call of the day. We appreciate our man, Greg Farmer, checking in. And we talked about this past week when discussing Hendon Hooker at the owners' meetings. Dan Campbell made it a point to say that Kyle Allen, who's been in the NFL for 7 years and he's been on 5 different teams, is going to compete for the backup job, and then Hendon Hooker has to win it. And I was a little bit stunned because that kid has had 0 success in the league. He was a 3rd-string quarterback for the Steelers this past year and rarely played. Was Josh Allen's backup in Buffalo 2 years ago and didn't really play much at all, and is not a guy that I believe is very good, to be honest with you. I just want to get the list of the teams that he's been on one more time. Carolina, Washington, Houston, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and now the Lions. He'll be joining his 6th team since 2018. Had a couple starts with the Panthers, had a couple starts with Washington a couple of years ago. He's just not very good. I've watched him play, and I was surprised because we talked about the Benjamin Solak piece from ESPN 2 weeks ago. I'm like, they're not concerned about Hendon Hooker. Kyle Allen's is the 3rd quarterback. You bring in, they got Jake Fromm, they got Kyle Allen. You bring guys in to compete and to play in the preseason. So we know Jared Goff's not playing in the preseason. And then Dan Campbell came out this week and said, yes, we've got a competition. Greg's point, or call of the day, is a good one. Maybe they're making this public to light a fire under Hendon Hooker and to say, listen, we don't want you getting fat and sassy. Now that Teddy Bridgewater is out of your hair again, and you can concentrate on being number 2, we want to bring in somebody that's been a backup in the league before that is going to push you a little bit. We do not want you getting too comfortable. That's kind of Greg's point. Others will say, man, if Hendon Hooker can't even beat out Kyle Allen, can he win a football game if Jared Goff gets hurt? Knock on wood that happens, but I think Greg brings up some interesting points. Look, backup quarterback is always the most fun topic in the offseason and especially in August. Remember a few years ago when the Lions had Tim Boyle and he was lighting it up and I called him Mr. August? Because you get to the real thing and you have to play in a game in September, October, and November. It's not against second, third, and fourth stringers like in the preseason. And there were flashes this past preseason from Hendon Hooker that looked pretty good. Able to scramble, use his legs. Was it the preseason game in Pittsburgh last year? There were some drives he looked good. And you're like, all right. But again, or maybe it was the Kansas City game. And yes, the Chiefs were playing some of their first teamers, but still, the regular season's the real deal. And I don't have inside information from people at practice that tell me, yeah, Hooker's no good. I don't have that. But yes, the fact that they made it a point this week at the owners' meetings to say, Kyle Allen's here to compete. Hendon Hooker's got to win the backup job. Well, Hendon Hooker was the backup for most of last season until the end of the year when Teddy Bridgewater decided, yeah, I'll come back and play a couple of regular season games and be your guy in the postseason. And the Lions took advantage of that. Of course, you want a veteran that's played the game and has been in playoff games like Bridgewater over a guy like Hooker. Now it should be Hooker's job to win. He's been in the system now, entering his third year, but second year actually playing. Remember, his first year was coming back from torn ACL and basically just held a clipboard. So, Greg Farmer, thank you for the chime in and some good stuff there. All right, Mock Draft Monday is coming up. On Monday, we'll be back with a fresh week and a set of podcasts here on Locked On Lions. Thanks for making us your first listen, everybody, and checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget, our man Jake Riepma will be on tonight on Locked On Sports Detroit following the Pistons and Grizzlies game with the postcast. We will talk to you again on Monday.